There you go.
Okay, part 2. Yes, so we're back in the yard in 101st and Commercial. We live between 2 streets, Exchange and Commercial. We had a big fence, a 6-foot fence, so nobody could. You'd have to really stretch your neck to look over our fence. So we had this big swimming pool. I have pictures of Wayne, 7 years, 8 years old, 10 years old. All these years that we spent in our yard, in the pool, on the swings, listening to my mother play guitar. My mother would say, okay, everybody sit down. Everybody's going to sing now. We're going to sing You Are My Sunshine. And I have every song recorded because that's what my mother did. She brought us together because today we can do this. Today we can talk about it. Today we can feel good about it. But back then,
Part of our history, our growing up.
we had to sneak around to be friends. We had to watch our P's and Q's because I was always being watched by the other side. The other side meaning that there were people that didn't appreciate what my mother did in life, and there were people that did. And the people that did, the camaraderie I speak of all the time, the support that you get from your family was one thing. You can depend on your family. But when you have a family like Wayne Wasily's family, when Tony Wasily gave his word that we were being protected, we were protected.
No doubt.
You didn't come and fuck with my mother anymore. Because if you were pointed out and gave my mother trouble, all she had to do was walk across the street and get Tony Wasily involved, and we would
Or
not.
my brother Ronnie.
Ronnie from my age. But we were protected.
Bad boy.
We were protected because we were respected. Not by the people who didn't know us. Of course there were haters. But we never shit where we ate. Let me explain that again. We never had abortions in my house. Was never one that was in my house. It was never prostitution going on in my house. But that was the
that
rumor.
was the theory in our neighborhood at the time.
Everybody thought that our house was full of prostitutes, full of abortions on an hourly basis. But that was not the truth. My mother never did abortions, nor did we have prostitutes. Because we lived there. You don't shit where you eat. That is not the way you did business. And that is not the way you lived. But our family was, on one hand, scared to death of us, and on the other hand, we were hardly respected in the neighborhood.
Exactly.
We went to all of the churches.
Exactly.
We went to the high schools. We had businesses in the district. Everybody depended on us. My mother had a restaurant. Yes, the mafia brought us a fantastic jukebox and cigarette machines and little jukeboxes all along the countertop, and we had every butcher and baker and candlestick maker deliver all our food right to the door. You used to get eggs to your door. You got milk delivered to your doorstep.
I remember picking up the glass milk jugs, 90-degree heat at 6 in the
jugs.
morning.
Yes.
There was no expiration date. You
Ready
pulled
for
it
you.
in, you put it in the fridge, you drank
Because it
it.
was fresh.
And one cardinal rule, there was no food wasted.
Absolutely.
When our parents made dinner, if you didn't want what was on the table, good night. You went to bed hungry.
That's right.
That's the way it worked.
And
Everybody in our neighborhood struggled. Some were a little bit easier and more comfortable per se than our families were, but we never went hungry.
Right.
We never went without a roof over our head. We never went without shoes and pants on us. Our parents provided, and them were big struggles back in the 60s and 70s. Our whole neighborhood was all, per se, middle class. We were construction workers, steel workers. My father, a cab driver for 40 years plus.
Truck drivers, iron workers.
It goes on and on. I mean, these are real things the way we grew up. We never had nothing handed on a silver platter to us. I didn't have a bike till I was 11 years old. My friends had bikes when they were 4 and 5. My father would pick up a bike off some alley and bring it home and buy a couple of wheels and parts and put it together and say, there's your bike.
Patch it up.
That's the way it was. But it's one of life's best taught lessons. You know what? You want something new, you want something better, earn it. We weren't handed nothing to us. We struggled our whole life, and I'm still struggling today. Yes. But I won't trade my life in for nothing. I met the Vice President of the United States. I was in charge of 62 hotels. I had 32 Secret Servicemen in my hotel. Got them drunk every night for the 5 days they were there. Met Al Gore at the airport, shook his hand. I got a plaque from the White House thanking me my services because I was the head maintenance man there.
Tell me, let's get back to the 60s.
Right.
Right here, when my mother needed help, we would definitely be able to run across the street. I remember time after time, if she got a threatening phone call from somebody,
Right.
we would run across the street and notify Tony Wasily. When that would happen, it was peace in the house. Other than that, if we couldn't contact somebody, we couldn't get the help. We had to struggle. We did get a raid at our house, and that was in 1972 when the cops busted down and they thought that we had the abortion suitcase. We have the abortion suitcase everybody knew about.
And they found nothing.
They found nothing. And it was headlines, and they ransacked the house, and they broke walls, and they tore up my stuffed animals in my bedroom, and they tried to get me to tell where the suitcase was.
That's
it was
because
close
of
by.
That's because the few, per se, upper class in our neighborhood, which nothing was upper class, but the few, very few and far between, better to do than normal neighbors we had, were the ones that would spread all the bullshit. And that's exactly why everybody pinpointed your mother's house. And what happened when the house was raided?
Right.
Nothing was found.
Nothing was found.
So,
but they did arrest me.
But the reputation carried on.
They arrested me for dangerous drugs. They said that my mother's pills were illegal drugs, and they weren't. They arrested my little brother Victor for pot, and we never smoked pot. There was never no drugs in my house, ever, ever, ever. And they made me call my stepfather out of Wisconsin Steel that day to come home, and they said, if you didn't do it, if you don't call him and tell him to come home, we're going to bust open his gun cabinet, because they're all illegal. If you don't want us to bust it open, call him. So I called Frank at work. Frank came home. What did they do? They busted open the cabinet anyway, and they took all his old guns, all his father's guns from Europe.
Yep.
And he brought over when he went to Europe with my mother. They have all these relics. Didn't have any fire pins. Didn't mean anything to the cops, but they took them, and they took us all to jail. My mother had to leave town. Of course, she left town for many months, and I would have to run over by Wayne's house and complain about this or that or other, because I had nobody else, and my mother was gone. It was my little brothers I had to take care of. My stepfather worked every day. I mean, we were scared. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know my mother had, was going to be in prison for the rest of her life. We didn't know. But they didn't find the abortion suitcase, so they didn't have evidence. So the court decided that the warrant was illegal, that it didn't unjustified. It didn't specify certain things, and it was all thrown out of court. So my mother demanded headlines in the County newspaper, just like they did when they arrested us. So we won that case. Thank you, Edward Radoliak. He pulled some strings. The mafia pulled some strings. We got out of trouble that I thought would...
Life-changing.
Well, it was life-changing, but I thought it would haunt me for the rest of my life, and it still haunts me for the rest of my life.
Yep. Number of things you don't forget.
So I'm going to take a break here now, and
we'll continue.
Go to video number 3. Thank you so much for listening.
Good morning, everybody.